I'm Kent, and this is a Weekend Adventure Rides how-to. Today we're installing a cliff top USB device charger. So this has two ports. It's a 5-volt, 4-amp, as compared to the one that's on the bike right now, which is a 2.1 amp. It just couldn't keep up with the camera equipment that I was using, so decided to go with a 4-amp. This one has a magnetic on-off switch, so when the cap is closed, it's not drawing any power. When it's off, I believe this one has an LED light. Unfortunately, a lot of these devices out there have LED lights, and they put a draw on your battery. So this one specifically does turn off when you close the cap. So the reason I got this one specifically. So one review and thing that I did read about this is that the wires are a little short. So what I did was I grabbed 14 gauge stranded black and red wire. It turns out that this is actually short. Then I have this, we can splice it in there and we'll be good to go. Other parts that you're gonna need to install this charger: some heat shrink tubing. It does say that this comes with a 5-amp fuse built into it, but I have a hard time believing that that's actually true or that it'll function properly. So I have an inline fuse holder, and I'm just gonna put a 5-amp fuse within that. I got some ring terminals to connect to the battery. These are crimpable 1614 AWG ring connectors. The other thing you're gonna need are some butt splices. These are really cheap ones. The heat shrink ones are really expensive, and I'd rather just put some heat shrink over the top of it. And then, of course, you're gonna need some electrical tape. As far as tools that you need for this project, you're gonna need a number 2 Phillips. This is a ratcheting screwdriver. It just comes in handy. And then, as we're wiring, of course, you're gonna need zip ties. So get some zip ties. These ones are a little bit long. A 6-inch zip tie would probably be plenty in this case, but I don't think I have any other ones. You're gonna need a wire stripper and crimper. As far as tools to disassemble the bike, the only thing you really need is some Allen keys or Allen wrenches, a lighter for the heat shrink tubing, and then if you don't have one of these, get one of these. It's a magnetic parts holder. So when you take something off the bike, or if you're working on whatever, you can put your tools, your nuts and bolts in here, and then they don't fall over the ground and you lose them. All right, let's bring the bike over. This is my 2016 V-Strom 1000. What we're gonna do is prepare the bike for the installation. First thing you're gonna need to do is remove the seat. So you're gonna need your key, typically. So your key into the key slot. When you twist it, you should pull back and up on the seat. The seat should come off pretty easily. All right, now that we've got the seat off, we have the electronics exposed. So you should be able to see your battery. I've had this apart before. I'm just gonna follow the same path that I used previously to install the device charger. Other things you're gonna need to remove, and these are gonna require a couple tools, mostly Allen wrenches. This aluminum piece here, if you don't take this off, it's very difficult to get your hands in there in order to get the electronics through. So we're also gonna need to remove this panel, this plastic panel here. All right, I'm gonna grab an Allen wrench and we'll get started on that. We're gonna get rid of this bolt right here. This is a 5mm Allen key. And then to remove this piece, you're just gonna pull up and back, just like removing the seat. So now we're gonna remove these 2 4mm bolts here so we can access this a little bit easier. Okay, we've got those 2 bolts out now. We have a little more access underneath the tank. I'm gonna destroy the box to remove this. Just eyeballing this, it appears that it's gonna be about 12 inches too short. No problem, I got some extra. I think that I'm wanting to place this kind of right here. I have an X mount that sits right here that holds my phone, and I don't want to get in the way of that or my ignition. So I think we're going to go with kind of right here. So you're going to need your Phillips head. Before I put this on there, I'm going to actually unscrew this backing plate. And so this will just slide out of there. So your actual clamp piece is easier to access, and the cables won't be in the way when you're trying to bolt this on here. We're gonna go around the bar, There's a rubber piece in here that keeps everything from moving around. We're just gonna line that up there and then kind of decide where we want this to ride. Now we're gonna have to MacGruber this in there. Just get those started. You don't want to tighten them down all the way to begin with. I mean, it's still going to move on there a little bit, which is important because we're going to do some final adjustments once we get the charger put back in there. It appears that's going to work pretty good right there. I'm not going to tighten this down yet as far as the backing plate on this because we are going to have to splice some wire in. I'm going to take my screwdriver and I'm going to start tightening this down. Now we're going to remove this again. We're going to remove the ring clamp and this piece so we can splice the wires together. So now that I've got the wire extended, I'm going to take some electrical tape and I'm just going to connect these two strands together so it's a little bit more manageable. You need to feed your wire through the loop and then put your backing screw on. So now we're going to run the wire down. What we're doing right now is we're feeding the wire through each section one at a time. And we want to feed the wire all the way through as we go. We've got the first bit gone through. Now we need to feed the wire between the frame and the gas tank. Now there's a section of about 8 inches you have to go through here. You kind of have to eyeball it. This may take a couple of attempts, but what we're looking to do is come out down here alongside this hand warmer wire. So I didn't include this in the tools that you'll need, but having a regular coat hanger or a piece of wire that you could bend into a loop on one end so you can hook it to your wires and then feed it through is making this tremendously easier. We got all of our cables ran. Now I'm going to do kind of a loose fit with this. I'm going to take off some of these old cable ties and run some new cable ties. Figure out exactly where I want to get this cable to fit before we connect any of the electrical connections to the battery. We've got our cables run all the way through. I'm going to take this and run it to the battery now. I'm going to install one of these 5 amp fuse holders. It's just a fuse holder with a 5 amp fuse in it. So we do that in the positive one. So what I'm probably going to do here is have to splice this again. Our black one, we just need to put a terminal end on that. I'm just going to go about that long. We'll cut that one off. A little long. It's always better to be a little long. Before we put this splice in, got some 1/4 inch heat shrink tubing. Just adds to a little bit of the weatherproof ability. So that fits on there pretty good. We're just gonna move that to the middle. And then with this, you can just grab a lighter, shrink that tubing up. But before I do that, I'm gonna make sure that everything on here is gonna work so I don't waste any heat shrink. We've got our 2 connector pieces together. We've got our heat shrink that we need to put over the top of these, shore up those connections a little bit. You can use a heat gun for this, but a lighter works pretty good. So now we have that butt connector fitted nicely in there, and that's essentially a waterproof connection now. We're going to do the same thing with this one. So just center your connector. Okay, so now that we've got those connections made, what I'm gonna do is take some electrical tape and just connect these wires because I don't like having loose wires just kind of floating around. Oh, I guess I can get rid of this. This is the toolkit, which I'll go into in another video, but you can't do very much with it anyway. Our connections all look good for all of our previous attachments, in which they're all pretty new, so they look good here. So now that we've got those connected, make sure your 5-amp fuse is connected correctly. The install is all complete. If we look up here, it looks like we have light. It's working. What we're gonna do here, you can see the light through there. If we put it on all the way, it turns off. All right, it works. At least it works so far. Take it off, light's back on. All right, we're gonna put our paneling back together. If you made it this far, you should have a functioning USB connector and power outlet on your bike. You could use the same steps to put together really any connection onto the battery up to your dash, even if you're running like your GPS. I hope you like this video. Please subscribe, like this video, comment down below future videos that you may have some interest in. And we'll see you on the next Weekend Adventure Rides How To.